Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Cloud Summit and for attending our session of implementing VMware Tanzu with Fujitsu. My name is Pedro Ferreira. I'm a senior cloud consultant for Fujitsu Western Europe, and with me is Hugo.
Hi, everyone. Hugo Phan. I'm currently a senior staff with VMware, and I focus on Tanzu and helping partners like Fujitsu.
Okay. This will be our agenda for our session. Today, we want to guide you on a cloud transformation journey from on-premises into the world of cloud-native applications, and show you also what is VMware Tanzu and what it can do to help you with this journey. Next, we'll show you how these solutions will help you deep dive into the hybrid world and what Fujitsu and VMware can actually do to help you and your business achieve your goals. So, what is the cloud transformation journey? Digital technology is changing our world at a rapid pace. In exchange for the benefits brought by the digital technology, we may in fact have created a chaotic world for ourselves. In today's complex world, trust has become a big challenge. Rebuilding trust within businesses and society is a central issue to a better future. As a service-oriented company founded on delivering strong digital technologies and as your business partner, Fujitsu wants to co-create trusted businesses and contribute to realizing a sustainable society. With this in mind, every day at Fujitsu, we help customers imagine, define, and perform their digital transformation. Some have already started their digital transformation a while ago with a strong on-premises virtualized environment running in private clouds. Others are a step ahead, with an increasing landscape in public clouds, enabling automation and platform-as-a-service solutions to migrate their applications. But only a few are actually transforming their legacy applications, developing and deploying multi-cloud containerized workloads capable of running everywhere. This is exactly where Fujitsu and our customers want you to begin. Hugo?
Oh, thanks, Pedro. So let me take our viewers through the VMware strategy together with Fujitsu. And we see the strategy being adopted by many of our partners as well. So every story starts with once upon a time and ends with, they lived happily ever after. The story of VMware is no different. We invented a fundamental innovation called virtualization for x86 architectures 20 years ago. Today, this innovation has led VMware to become the essential digital foundation upon which companies run and transform their businesses. So let's explore what VMware does on infrastructure software in a bit more detail. So every effort in infrastructure starts with the focus on applications, of course. Businesses need to build, run, manage, connect, and protect all types of apps, traditionally on-premises, SaaS, and also container-based. So our vision is simple here. Safely enable access to any application on any cloud from any device. So app modernization is becoming a top priority for every company's digital transformation initiatives. The industry has made a clear choice for container technology, and that is Kubernetes. Our focus here is to enable developers who want to take advantage of the new world of microservices on containers. And a solution here is called VMware Tanzu, which is the Japanese word for containers. Tanzu, which combines pivotal and existing VMware cloud native assets, is the industry's best enterprise container platform for a multi-cloud world. So under this layer of apps, VMware's core proposition is to have our infrastructure serve a multi-cloud world. So a multi-cloud world takes three forms: the private cloud, the telco edge cloud, and the public cloud, of course. So in the private cloud, VMware pioneered the innovation of virtualizing servers, storage, networking, and then adding a layer of management that brings automation and AI for what we call the vision of the self-driving data center. We call this solution VMware Cloud Foundation, and it's the industry's best solution to reduce the 3 C's: cost, complexity, and carbon of a private cloud. So in addition to private clouds, customers are looking to build and operate container-based apps across multiple clouds. To help them rapidly migrate to any cloud, we've engineered VMware Cloud Foundation to run on every one of the hyperscaler clouds, along with over 4,000 service providers globally, including Fujitsu. So all of them see VMware as the quintessential infrastructure to operate hybrid clouds using the same tools, same teams, and policies that are used in the data center. So having to refactor or re-platform existing apps to move them into the public cloud has proven to be a waste of time and money. Both the data center, the cloud, are now expanding also to the edge, where customers are using VMware Cloud Foundation to seamlessly support telco edge use cases for the future world of 5G. The key underlying capability of VMware Cloud Foundation is our networking platform, which we call the Virtual Cloud Network. Today, over 13,000 networking customers are successfully using our networking platform, NSX, which extends from the data center networking to firewalls, load balancers, and a software-defined WAN for the branch and edge use cases. Beyond infrastructure and apps, every organization must also consider the needs of their most important asset, their people. So we can onboard new employees in a record time of 15 minutes with the apps they need on their choice of Apple, Google, Microsoft device by delivering the best employee experience, while also ensuring the enterprise is secure. So in conclusion, there are 5 areas of VMware's focus: the modernization of applications, the running of and managing of multi-cloud environments, the connecting of them through a virtual cloud networking solution, the delivery of a digital workplace, and holistic intrinsic security portfolio. So if you've placed what I've just described on top of the VMware vision, you'll see that these 5 priorities land right on top of that any cloud, any app, any device slide. So our customers tell us that this vision resonates incredibly well with them as they plan their digital transformation. Back to you, Pedro. Could you tell us about the challenges you see when you talk to your customers and partners when it comes to modernizing their applications?
Of course. Thank you, Hugo. But not everything goes as expected when we're talking about transformations and with this specific digital transformation journey. And there are actually a few challenges that IT teams will face. In order to develop and deploy multi-cloud containerized applications, IT teams will need to guarantee that they are capable of dealing with the lack of skilled resources and get people trained. They will need to learn how to deal with storage because containers are ephemeral and doesn't store data like traditional VMs do. They need to understand and to learn how does container network configuration works and all the different available plugins in each of the different orchestrators. They will need to learn how to work with scalability due to the always increasing number of workloads running as containers. And how do we ensure that we can deploy applications consistently across different Kubernetes clusters? They will also need to choose between several available orchestration platforms like vanilla Kubernetes. They can go with AKS, EKS, GKE, OpenShift, and these just to name a few. And also, they'll need to deal with security to ensure that the right people have access to the right resources and that their apps and data are secure. Additionally, they need to deal with monitoring to ensure availability and resiliency, and also to perform troubleshooting and gain observability around their applications and microservices. So let's now take a look at what is VMware Tanzu and how does it help teams and companies meet these specific challenges. When we look at modern applications, they're actually distributed and complex. Looking at traditional, let's call it legacy, virtual machine-based applications, these are fairly static, aside from adding more RAM, more vCPUs, and storage capacity. They can scale vertically or horizontally, and each change typically involves an additional amount of configurations to other services, like load balancers, for example. On the other hand, when we're talking about modern applications, these are actually distributed and operate independently. They are built using microservices and using data from a variety of sources while residing across a heterogeneous infrastructure, being able to run their different components as containers, serverless functions, and also VMs. Also, modern apps are very dynamic and the development clusters may only be operational for a few weeks. Resources are typically used only when needed and they can scale automatically without additional configurations. This can actually be a problem for IT teams. So, what does this mean? Well, modern applications show that priorities and goals for the IT teams are actually the opposite for each other. On one side, we have the developers, for those which self-service is the top priority. Developers want to be able to develop the code, they want to be able to test it, deploy it, and support it in a total service way. They don't want to deal with the infrastructure team for this. But on the other side, we have admins, that for them, governance is the key. You want to ensure availability, security, quality of service, and cost control for the applications they support. So, what does VMware Tanzu can actually do to help both teams? VMware Tanzu does two things. It delivers native Kubernetes and awareness to vSphere, and it bridges the gap between IT operations and developers. IT operators continue to provision, view, and monitor their infrastructure as they have always done, but now with Kubernetes awareness and insight that has eluded them in the past. They continue to use the same tools that they already know. Well, on the other side, developers can now deploy Kubernetes and container-based workloads directly on vSphere using the same methods and tools that they have always used in any Kubernetes distribution, including those in public clouds. They can use kubectl to deploy Kubernetes workloads and Ansible or Terraform to deploy vSphere workloads, for example. Both teams benefit by being able to use their existing workloads, their existing tools, sorry. Nobody has to change the way they work. Nobody has to learn new tools or make concessions. Also, at the same time, both teams have a consistent view and are able to manage the same objects. Now, Hugo, can you provide me some help, some insights on vSphere versus Kubernetes architecture?
Sure. Thanks, Pedro. So let's take a look at the architecture similarities between vSphere and Kubernetes. This may help those who are new to Kubernetes but experienced with vSphere get a quick understanding of how Kubernetes fits into their IT services. So let's start from the top. So at the top, you can see that the operator from a vSphere perspective traditionally uses the vSphere web client, right? There are also other tools like Power CLI, Terraform, Ansible that they connect to the vCenter server appliance to then do things, right? So doing things including creating virtual machines and applications, for example. On the other side, you have the DevOps operator or the developer who uses kubectl commands to connect to the Kubernetes control plane to then send instructions either decoratively or with YAML files or typing into the command line to create Kubernetes clusters and pods, for example. So on the vCenter side, on the vSphere side, the actual persistence database configuration is kept inside that vCenter database, which is a Postgres database. Conversely, in a Kubernetes world, that's used with etcd, which is the database for the Kubernetes control plane. If we go further down, we can see that the management APIs and orchestration, both of these are available on both vCenter server and also on the Kubernetes control plane. So as a vSphere admin, you use those tools I said previously, or the web client. As a DevOps person to use Kubernetes, they use kubectl. Now, if we go a little bit further down where we see the ESXi hosts in vSphere, so that's the hypervisor. So those are the workers where you run your workloads and applications on. So the applications are virtual machines. So that is the unit of scheduling in a vSphere world. Conversely, on the Kubernetes side, we have the worker nodes can be either physical servers on bare metal or virtual machines. Most of the time, people do use virtual machines to run Kubernetes clusters because it provides that additional layer of availability and logical separation. Now, if we go slightly up, you can see that in the vSphere world, we have resource pools. So these are resource pools where we can construct logical resource reservations and constraints around what workers, i.e. those VMs, are able to do within that. Think of it as like a pie, and each slice is a resource pool. The same thing in the Kubernetes world. We create these namespaces out of the cluster, and those namespaces contain things like the resource quotas, resource limits for those pods that will be deployed into that namespace. Now, when it comes to storage in the vSphere world, we can of course attach external storage in the likes of Fiber Channel, iSCSI, NFS storage, or even using hyperconverged storage from vSAN. And that storage can be used by those virtual machines. Same thing happens in the Kubernetes space. So in Kubernetes world, those storage, the actual persistent storage and the storage of the actual pods that are running in the Kubernetes cluster, and also the storage for the actual Kubernetes clusters, are consumed by, in a vSphere world, of course, on the vSphere storage. So that's all done by that CSI driver. So that CSI driver is a way to get Kubernetes to talk to vSphere to then create persistent volume claims against persistent volumes that the vSphere admin has already created so that the DevOps admin can use that storage. Similarly, with the NSX world, we have that CNI thing you see just above CSI. So CNI enables the networking between the outside world of Kubernetes and the networking within Kubernetes. All right. So it provides a very, very similar layout. So if you're new to Kubernetes, look towards the left and the right. If you're new to vSphere, but your business is gonna work with you to build a vSphere-based Tanzu environment, then you can use this diagram to quickly get that understanding. So next, let's go to going hybrid. So what this means when we talk about going hybrid with modern applications. So one of the key aspects of enabling this hybridity with regards to running containers and container clusters, Kubernetes clusters across multiple clouds here is Tanzu Standard. So Tanzu Standard is for organizations that want to operate a Kubernetes-based container solution across multiple clouds. Whereas Tanzu Basic is intrinsically tied to vSphere, Tanzu Standard provides you the flexibility to extend a consistent, open source aligned Kubernetes distribution across on-premises, public clouds, and edge. The alternative, of course, is to operate multiple Kubernetes distributions from legacy vendors and all the hyperscalers like EKS, AKS, GKE, each with different access controls, policy configurations, and more, making it nearly impossible to operate with consistency across clouds. So remember all the challenges that Pedro talked about earlier? So Tanzu Standard allows you to operate one distribution anywhere and gain access to consistent management of all your Kubernetes clusters with global observability, common configuration control, and centralized data protection across any environment. So I'll talk about this in the demo in a little bit later on. So let's talk more about Tanzu Mission Control. So I see a common pattern within organizations that are adopting Kubernetes that looks something like this. They'll start small with a single Kubernetes cluster, a small team that's leveraging Kubernetes, starting to learn Kubernetes and starting to build applications into Kubernetes clusters from today. And previously, they were probably using Docker, for example. So maybe they'll choose Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, or maybe they'll be leveraging something else for their underlying Kubernetes distribution. And then that team grows very quickly. They recruit more developers, they build more Kubernetes clusters, and so on. And the next team wants to also adopt Kubernetes, and they often may choose to go a different route. And you get this end state where we have a lot of complexity. So you have Kubernetes clusters running TKG from VMware, you have EKS, AKS, GKE, you have OpenShift, and you have maybe just vanilla Kubernetes deployments deployed manually. So that creates a hell of a lot of challenges, which Pedro mentioned earlier, for example. So these are really the challenges that we're focused on solving with Tanzu Mission Control. So Tanzu Mission Control provides a centralized management platform for both operations and developers. So how do we get clusters under management of Mission Control? Well, we provide a capability where you can lifecycle manage TKG clusters And in the demo, I'll provide a little bit more detail on what this looks like. However, we can also attach any other existing CNCF conformant Kubernetes cluster to meet our customers where they currently are. So over to you, Pedro. Could you tell our audience on how Tanzu Mission Control interacts with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid?
Sure, thank you, Hugo. Well, how does Tanzu Mission Control and Tanzu Kubernetes Grid work together? Starting with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, as you mentioned earlier, it provides a lifecycle management of clusters and extensions in what we think of as a sort of infrastructure domain and available across multiple clouds. It's possible to run TKG on FMPCS, for example, is Fujitsu Managed Private Cloud Service, and also on Fujitsu Touchdown, our own VMware Cloud and AWS Managed Service. But TKG can also run on any vSphere environment or hyperscaler. And with Mission Control, customers can actually register their Tanzu Kubernetes Grid clusters and drive those capabilities across many environments of clouds. As you mentioned earlier, you can also attach any CNCF conformant Kubernetes cluster to Tanzu Mission Control. And all those capabilities like role-based access control, policy management, data protection, apart from lifecycle management, apply to these attached clusters, making Tanzu Mission Control to act as a single pane of glass for Kubernetes cluster management. So this really allows us to meet customers where they are and provide a variety of options for them to get started with Tanzu and Tanzu Mission Control. And what about observability, Hugo?
Thanks, Pedro. So we've enabled faster time to insight with Tanzu Mission Control integration with Tanzu Observability. One of the integrations that is highly demanded by our customers, which is the integration between VMware Tanzu Mission Control and Tanzu Observability by Wavefront. So with this integration, we are unifying the forces of centralized multi-cluster Kubernetes management and full stack Kubernetes observability and analytics, further enhancing the efficiency of Kubernetes management while enabling developers with more flexibility and autonomy. So Tanzu Observability delivers packaged insights and analytics at massive scale, reliably with granular controls, enabling enterprises to roll out telemetry as a service to all of their engineering teams. The value of Tanzu Observability is the universal collection of capabilities, analytics engine, and one-click dashboarding, helping you not only collect, but analyze, visualize, and correlate telemetry across your entire environment, including applications and multi-cloud deployments. So through a single click, the Kubernetes operators can install the Wavefront Kubernetes collector on any cluster. After the Wavefront Kubernetes collector is successfully installed, you'll be able to click out to the Tanzu Observability platform directly through the Tanzu Mission Control UI. And I'll show this in the demo shortly. Once the data is in Tanzu Observability, Kubernetes operators can observe the health, performance, availability of individual clusters beyond top-level summary metrics. The Wavefront Kubernetes collector collects the core Kubernetes metrics, including cluster, namespace, nodes, pods, containers, CPU, and also memory metrics. It can also collect metrics from Prometheus endpoints for centralized views across the entire environment. So let's go to the demo. So I think I have to share my screen, so give me a second.
Yes, please.
I think, can you stop sharing your screen? Yeah,
Done.
thanks. All right, I hope the sound works. Let me know if the sound works. If not, I'll have to probably provide commentary. Is the sound working?
No.
That's strange. Okay, let me comment over this then. So here's the view from vSphere, where you have a Kubernetes cluster running in vSphere. So you have those TKG vSphere prod 03 cluster there. So that's one of the vSphere environments that we can attach to Tanzu Mission Control. So in Tanzu Mission Control, this is the view that you'll be able to see. You can see there's a lot of vSphere-based Tanzu Kubernetes clusters. There's some clusters from AWS. There's also some clusters from OpenShift, Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure. So when it comes to attaching management clusters, this is where you register a management cluster here. And it's very, very easy. You click on the register management cluster, and you choose obviously the cluster name. So let's say I'm going to register my cluster in Dublin. It's going to be part of the development work group. And then there's the link that I copy and paste into my management cluster in Dublin. Press OK, and it will then appear in this list of clusters here. Once that's done, you can create a cluster. So now that you've attached a management cluster, you can now create a workload cluster, right? But you can also attach a cluster that has been created outside of Tanzu Mission Control. So here you can see I have a number of other clusters. And I mentioned earlier, you can attach clusters that are non-VMware as well. So here, let's attach a VMware cluster, TKG cluster, putting in the billing apps group. Give the cluster a name, so TKG vSphere dev-02. Press next. And choose the Kubernetes distribution, right? So you can choose the latest or the oldest if you like as well. And here you choose the storage classes. And this is where we choose the single node or the highly available production instance for the workload control plane, right? So for the control plane, we can choose 2 vCPUs, 4 gigs for the workers, or even larger. It depends on what applications you can be running inside. And then you choose the same thing for your worker nodes. So you press next, and that will then tell Tanzu Mission Control to connect to that management cluster to create a worker cluster. And the worker cluster is where you run all your Kubernetes pods into. Okay, so here you see that worker cluster is now up and running, TKG vSphere dev-02. And you can see some basic information with regards to the metrics, right? So CPU, requested memory, you can see the node pools, number of nodes that we did. Now here we can scale up. So we can scale up and scale out that worker cluster as well. So you get that kubeconfig file downloaded, and now you can log into that cluster straight from your terminal on your MacBook or your Apple or your Microsoft computer. So we also have cluster groups as well. So cluster groups provide a way for us to basically place multiple Kubernetes clusters from any cloud into a cluster group. And what we can then do further is, of course, provide policies for those cluster groups as well. So everything in Tanzu Mission Control is very hierarchical. So we can assign various policies. Here you can see access policies, image registry policies, network, security, quota, and custom policies. And these policies make it a lot easier for your DevOps administrator or your Kubernetes cluster administrators to specify, for example, which person has role-based access control to a particular cluster or group of clusters. And then we can, of course, utilize workspaces and policy insights to help you keep track of which policies are being used where. So, for example, privilege escalation container is not allowed, for example. And the key thing here is enabling your Kubernetes administrators and operators to easily manage this massive list of Kubernetes clusters. So we also have integration with Tanzu observability by Wavefront. So here we're seeing a cluster view, product 03. If I click on Tanzu observability by Wavefront, that will open up directly the metrics in Tanzu observability for all the information provided from collecting data from that cluster. So here we see there's got 6 active nodes and so on, right? So you can go straight from TMC straight into Tanzu observability from one interface there. The next thing we have is Tanzu Service Mesh. So with Tanzu Service Mesh, this is this cloud network that I was talking about earlier. It allows you to run conformance checks and CIS benchmark checks against the CIS standards. So with conformance, you can run inspections, right, on all of your clusters and the pods and applications running in that cluster. So, are they compliant with particular standards that you want to align with, right? The next thing we have is, of course, data protection with backups. So with data protection, you can, of course, integrate what we call Velero, which is an open source Kubernetes backup and restore recoverable tool. And with that, you can schedule backups. You can provide ad hoc backups to your developers. So before maybe they upgrade something, they can back up the persistent volumes. So the actual storage for pods, right, before they do anything. And that provides a really real quick overview of what you can do with Tanzu Mission Control and integration with Tanzu Observability and Service Mesh. So back to you, Pedro.
Thank you, Hugo. Can you please stop sharing your screen? Okay, thank you. Now, that was a very interesting demo about Tanzu Mission Control in VMware Tanzu. So what about Fujitsu and VMware? And why have we chosen to deploy vSphere Tanzu, VMware Tanzu with Fujitsu? For Fujitsu, innovation is driven by integration of people, information, and infrastructure. In EMEA, 27,000 strong workforce is committed to digital co-creation, blending business expertise with digital technology and creating new value with ecosystem partners and customers. We have global delivery centers spread across Portugal, Poland, Russia, and India. And we also have an application factory in Spain focused only on developing cloud-native containerized solutions. Fujitsu has achieved the leader status in Gartner Magic Quadrants for managed workplace services and the Gartner Magic Quadrant for data center outsourcing and hybrid infrastructure managed services. We enable our customers to digitally transform with connected technology services focused on artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and cloud, all underpinned by security. Pioneers of the next generation data center foundation to improve cost efficiency, resiliency, and adaptability in face of business change. Together with VMware, we have provided solutions for infrastructure and services in data center, workplace, cloud, and edge with a partnership with more than 16 years. Together, we have performed more than 1,500 current joint implementations and have trained more than 10,000 cloud service experts delivering solutions in partnership with VMware. We have a greater number than 25,000 vSphere install base and are consistently leading in 17 of 21 benchmark categories. Okay. All these points really marks us as a preferred partner for our customers to achieve the digital transformation. You can find more about Fujitsu products and VMware partnership on the links shown in the slide, and that we will share afterwards. And regarding with VMware key takeaways, Hugo.
Yeah, so if you're interested to learn more about container basics or Kubernetes in general, VMware has a great bunch of resources that you can utilize today to get, either hands-on or gain more knowledge around our technology in general. So container basics, the first link there, learn the basics of how to build container images and run them. Kubernetes fundamentals is also a great starting point as well. So we have a very quick hands-on introduction to using Kubernetes. But the key one that I'd like to point out here is Kube Academy. So Kube Academy is a free learning service from VMware. It has a tremendous amount of courses that you can do in your own time. It's on demand, it's free, it's very nicely structured. So for example, if you had an hour, you can choose a course that is an hour in length, and they have a couple of classes in that. It's built by VMware experts who are both from VMware and from all of our companies that have joined VMware recently. So Bitnami, Pivotal, Avi Networks, and so on. So these courses are built by the experts for free. So please feel free to make an account and take advantage of those courses. If you'd like to read more slides around Tanzu, tanzuvmware.com/content/slides has a bunch of slides that you can download, use in your corporate slideware as well, as you see fit. And then if you'd rather watch more videos, then of course that link there has a list of all of the Tanzu videos that may help you with gaining a better understanding. So with that, do we have any questions?